Welcome to the Salesforce Integration Guide. In this video, we're going to walk through the Salesforce Integration Guide together and connect our Salesforce instance to Unify. First and foremost, there are three key benefits to integrating your Salesforce with Unify. First is that Salesforce records can be used to construct exclusions that prevent Unify from reaching out to certain audiences that you don't want to outbound. This could be deals in flight or customers that are closed won. Second, you can use your Salesforce instance to create plays on specific audiences. For example, close, lost, re-engage. Last but not least, Unify can write data back to your Salesforce instance in a way that you program to maintain it as the source of truth for your business. Unify's integration with Salesforce is designed from the ground up to prevent many common pitfalls like overwriting existing data or creating duplicate records. For an in-depth description on how exactly Unify does this, check out this optional article, How Bidirectional Syncs Work. Before we go into the integration, there are two prerequisites. One is that you have a Salesforce subscription with API access. If you're not sure whether you have API access or not, follow these instructions to determine the plan that you have and then get API access enabled. Second, you will need admin access in order to assign the correct permissions to the integration user, and you might even need to bring in your Salesforce admin to complete these steps. Let's get into the setup. The first thing we'll want to do is choose an integration user strategy. There's a few approaches to this, but the one we recommend is to have a dedicated integration user. This user is going to be granted specific but limited permissions. All updates made within Salesforce from this user can be attributed to Unify. The one con that you might experience with this is that you'll have to purchase this license and it may take time for you to set this up at your company, but we highly recommend this because you'll be able to directly attribute everything that needs to be Unify to Unify. There are two other options like using a shared integration user with other connected apps or an existing individual's user, but the biggest downsides to this is that if those users leave the company or if their license gets turned off, your Unify integration will stop working. And we don't recommend this because it's also hard to see what actions come from Unify versus these users. So again, we just want to strongly encourage you to set it up with a dedicated integration user. Let's go ahead and connect your Salesforce instance to Unify. Navigate to the settings of your Unify instance and click the Salesforce integration on the left-hand side menu. Then click this Setup Salesforce button and authenticate with your dedicated integration user. Once you're connected, it should look something like this. You should see an active connection with permissions enabled. However, if those permissions have not been enabled, it may look like this, and you'll want to click View and work through the permissions that you need to turn on for your Salesforce user. Now, let's choose which objects to create. Salesforce has two different ways of representing companies and people. As you might know, the first way is contacts and accounts. Every person has a contact record and contacts are always associated with accounts. The second way is that every person has a lead record, which contains information about both the person and their company. Now, Unify supports both options and you can choose which approach you want to use on the integration settings page. If you're not sure which one to start with, we recommend starting with the contacts and accounts approach. This is where you set this up on the integration settings page. You'll see the section here, create new records as contacts and accounts or leads, and you can toggle between contacts and accounts or leads in this dropdown. Next, we will create our field mappings. Unify provides granular control over which Salesforce fields map to which Unify fields. For each object, you'll want to select Create Mapping and update any fields that you wish to customize. In most cases, if you're not sure, the default options that have been enabled are a good starting point, and you can always return and update these as you customize your Unify instance. If we navigate to the very bottom here of the Salesforce integration settings, we can see the companies, people, and email field mappings. When we click Update Mapping, this pulls up all the settings for which fields in Unify we want to map in Salesforce. If you select the mapping direction down here, you can configure whether it's read-only or read and write, and you can also map it to the correct field in your Salesforce instance. Likewise, for the people object, if we click Update Mapping here, we can also configure things like email and specify which field this is under the lead field or the contact field. Last but not least, here is where we can configure the email field mapping. Again, this is the Unify emailed field on the left-hand side here. In the middle is the mapping direction, and on the right-hand side, Salesforce fields. Once you've set up the mapping for your companies, people, and emails, you're ready to proceed to the next step. You can begin syncing data into Unify by selecting Resume. The button is actually located here. Since this is actually set up in this Unify and Salesforce instance, the button toggles to pause, but in your instance, it should say resume, and you can toggle this between pause and resume as needed. Last but not least, to enable Unify to write back to your Salesforce instance, you'll want to activate the toggle next to enable writing to Salesforce. This will allow Unify to sync records back to Salesforce. This is this toggle here under Enable Writing to Salesforce. In this case, the black indicates that it's turned on. And that's it. With that, your Salesforce integration is complete, and your Salesforce data should now be accessible by Unify to action on.